Last week, Zimbabwe abolished democracy, and I've seen more coverage on a football match than I have this. On July 7th, 2026, President Mnangagwa signed CAB 3 into law. What this does is increase both MP and presidential terms from 5 to 7 years. The next election got pushed from 2028 to 2030, and speaking of those elections, citizens can no longer vote for the president anymore. Parliament does. 216 MPs voted in favor for this, and 42 were against it. And Mnangagwa personally gets to appoint 10 additional senators just because. And obviously there's been a ton of controversy around it. The Zimbabwean constitution requires a national referendum before changes like this go through. A referendum, meaning that people have to vote on it. ZANU-PF compressed 90 days of required public consultation into just 4 days. 4. All the hearings that did happen were packed with busloads of ZANU-PF supporters, and opposition leaders said they were ignored entirely. Human rights and liberation war veterans, the people who actually fought for the country, called it a constitutional coup. And to no one's surprise, activists who tried to protest against this were arrested for allegedly planning a political demonstration. I think my problem with all of this is that ZANU-PF already controls parliament with a supermajority. But here's the thing, ZANU-PF's presidential vote share fell from 61% in 2013 to barely over 50% in the last election. They are losing people, so they took people out of the equation. And think about what this does to opposition MPs. If parliament chooses the president and ZANU controls parliament, what incentive does any opposition have to actually oppose? They either vote for whoever runs the dictatorship, or they lose their seats. Mark my words, opposition parties in Zimbabwe will go extinct. 2030 is only the beginning. Now, what makes me sick is that in 2017, Mnangagwa came into power via military coup. He overthrew Robert Mugabe, who had ruled Zimbabwe since independence, and he sold himself as the new face of Zimbabwe. Democracy, economic reform, a new era. You remember that? And now he's made dictatorship legal. Let's make crime legal so that crime isn't illegal anymore. This man is 83 years old, and he's legally secured power until at least 2030. And it's textbook African politician behavior, which is so unfortunate because we are in 2026. And always remember that the Ndebele people never received reparations, let alone an acknowledgement for the genocide that happened to them. And some of them are still living in segregation till this day. CAB 3 only ensures that the exact same political class that never addressed this will stay in power indefinitely. They are kicking people who are already down and then proceeding to kick them harder. Now here's what I find interesting. June 30th made headlines everywhere, which I am in full support of. But CAB 3, the literal abolition of democracy in a country of 15 million people, barely registered on the news. And I think I know why. CAB 3 requires you to actually understand how democracy works to grasp why it's so catastrophic. International media loves covering African chaos, not the slow erosion of an African democracy. International news media like the BBC raised little to any concern, and the African Union petitioned to suspend Zimbabwe. They didn't act. And then the same countries that will turn around and lecture Africa about democracy said nothing, because it tells you what they actually value. They just want optics. I'm saying all of this as a child of a Zimbabwean. I've always repped my country, or at least its people. And now those people don't even have the right to choose their leader. And some of them will live and die without ever experiencing a fair and free election. And that's just something we can't just scroll past. And look, I'm not going to pretend like those elections were fair in the first place, but now even the illusion of democracy has disappeared in Zimbabwe. The people who suffer are always the same people. And this isn't just Zimbabwe's problem. When one country on this continent legalizes this, every other leader is watching and they are taking notes. Democracy usually doesn't disappear overnight. It disappears one institution at a time, one amendment at a time, one exception at a time. And once people get used to power concentrating in fewer and fewer hands, it becomes the new normal. Zimbabwe just might be the most obvious example of it this week. And we have to ask ourselves, how much power are we willing to give away before we realize we can't get it back? God bless Zimbabwe and everyone in it.